Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for watching. Really quick, I want to ask you guys to please share this video. A lot of time and a ton of work went into this one, so please help me get this one some views. But today, we're gonna see how many houses will a bullet go through. So we've all heard the never-ending debates on this caliber will penetrate X amount of walls, or I don't use that gun because it'll go through your house and into the neighbor's house and kill everyone on the block. The over-penetration debate. Now, I tried to get someone to stand here and let me shoot through them into the houses, but for whatever reason, no one wanted to do that. People are such wimps these days, I swear. Aside from shooting through the bad guy, which is obviously a real concern, a much more likely scenario in that heated self-defense situation is that you'll probably miss once or twice and send a round into your wall. And today we're going to see, if you were to do that, how many houses would that bullet actually go through. So these are the houses that we have. Obviously they're very basic, but keep in mind I literally had to build every single one of these, but this is a standard, wall of a house that you would find. So it is pretty realistic, but we're going to set this up as if you were inside your house, shot and missed the bad guy, and sent a round into your wall. So I'm actually going to get up on this railroad tie here so that I can show you guys what we got. So our first wall, again, this is from inside your house. We have a layer of drywall. Then you can see we have that insulation there. We actually tried to use foam insulation, but it didn't work too well. You can see it in some of these. You can see that yellow foam insulation right there, but it didn't come out like we wanted it to. So we just stuck with the old school wool insulation, and then we have a 1/2 inch layer of plywood after that, and then a layer of siding. And you can see the same exact thing here, just flipped around, because this is obviously the neighbor's house, and then the second wall of their house, out of their house into the next house, and so on and so forth. And you can see I also kind of randomly placed some studs in the first few panels of houses that we have. So I figured that's the best way to do it, is just randomly put the studs in there, because it's unlikely that you'll hit a stud every single time. But some of these bullets might hit studs, some of them might not. It's just the way that it would probably really go. So total, we have 8 panels that I built. So since we're starting inside of our house, if it goes all the way through the very last one, that would be going into the 4th house. Now, obviously in most houses, there's gonna be extra walls, furniture, appliances, people, all kinds of stuff that could stop your bullet. So we'll just pretend that these are either small houses or the part of the house that only has 2 walls, and see how far these bullets go. Let's do it. So I tried to keep the intro short and the explaining to a minimum, but obviously a ton of work went into this, and there's just a million variables that you could apply to a situation like this. But I thought this was probably the best overall way to set this up. So use your imagination. But first up, we're gonna start with the 22 long rifle out of the Ruger 10/22. We're just gonna start small and work our way up through different calibers that people might use for home defense. 22 long rifle. All right, so the 22 went into the first wall right there. You can see that exit hole, and it did go into the neighbor's house, into the second wall of the neighbor's house, and stopped right there. So it looks like it might have hit a stud. It's kind of hard to tell, which again is a possibility. So the 22 actually did exit the first house and go into the neighbor's house. Again, keep in mind that every house is different. Some definitely have more layers than this. Some are built exactly like this. If you live in a brick house, congratulations, you probably won't have too many bullets exiting a house like that. And let's hope that you hit the bad guy and don't have to worry about this much over penetration. So next up, we're gonna shoot the 380 out of the little SIG P290 RS. This is a hollow point, Federal Premium hollow point. 380. Again, I'm trying to keep the explaining to a minimum, because we could make this video an hour long discussing all the different possibilities, which would probably bore you guys to death. But one more thing to consider is obviously the kind of ammo you're using. Different kinds of ammo are gonna perform differently in a test like this. So here is our 380. Right there below the 22, obviously a much bigger hole. You can see on the back we have an exit hole. It looks like it bent that siding a little bit more than the 22. 380 also went into the neighbor's house and into the second wall of the neighbor's house, and did not go any further. So the 380 did the exact same thing that the 22 did. Exited your house and went into the neighbor's house, no further. All right, for the 9mm, 40 and 45, I brought out the exact same kind of ammo so we can hopefully get the most consistent result. So next up, we have the 9mm Federal Punch out of the brand new 9mm Smith & Wesson Shield Plus. This gun is awesome. It's probably my new favorite carry gun. Thanks to Turtle Lake Tactical for sending this out. We're gonna do videos on this coming here soon. But I think he's caught on to me because every time he sends me one of these guns, I end up buying it, and I'm definitely gonna buy one of these. This thing is awesome. So let's see what the 9mm does. That one put off quite a bit more dust. All right, so our 9mm went in right there, just below the 380. I've been trying to get these first few all pretty close together, but you can see our exit hole right there from the 9mm into the neighbor's house, into the second wall of the neighbor's house. That one made a weird hole, like it might have been kind of tumbling at this point. Hard to tell, but it actually did exit that second house and go into the third house. Now let me see. All right, so it actually did not go into the third house. It went into the outside of the third house. So really, no more risk than the 22 or the 380 unless someone was in between the second and the third house, like mowing their grass or something, and caught a 9mm to the neck. But the 9mm actually did not go into that third house. All right, next up we have the 40 Smith & Wesson. Once again, the Federal Punch, this time in 40, and we're shooting this one out of the Glock Micro Conversion Kit. So this is just a Glock 23 put inside of this thing. It doesn't have that long of a barrel. It is a little bit bigger than the 9, but not much. Let's see what the 40 does. I'm gonna try to put this one up a little higher. Definitely the most dramatic impact so far. So our 40 Smith & Wesson is that one right there on top. I'm gonna try to get a close-up of this for you guys. So you can see, obviously it exited the first house, went into the second house, exited the second house, went into the third house with the 9mm, but the 40 actually went all the way through and to that third house. Now it did not come out of the third house, but you can see it did bulge that siding right there on the outside of the third house. So the 40 is the very first one that we've had make it all the way into that third house. All right, let's try the 45 ACP. Once again, this is a Federal Punch, and we're shooting this one out of the Smith & Wesson M&P Shield. Now the 45 is definitely slower than the 9 and the 40, but it's also a heavier bullet, which usually means harder to slow down. So let's see what it does. I'm gonna try to put this one below all the others. Let's check it out. By the way, I like how this cicada's just been chilling here for the entire video. Go ahead and get him off of there. So our 45 is that one right there on the very bottom. And again, I'm gonna try to squeeze in here. So you can see our exit hole. Obviously it left the first house, went into the second house, exited the second house, and did not penetrate the outside of that third house, which means that this bullet is laying on the ground somewhere. Let's try and find it. Look at that. There it is. Obviously covered in drywall and insulation. Hollow point cavities completely clogged, but the bullet is in pretty much perfect condition. You can see how far away it actually was, about 10 feet off to the side. So for all the major pistol calibers, the 9, 40, and 45, they all went through the neighbor's house and then stopped, except the 40. So add that to the long list of reasons to not get a 40. That was a joke, but the only one that did go into the third house is the 40. The others went either into the neighbor's house or through the neighbor's house and stopped. All right, let's try a couple high-powered pistol calibers. These are actually pretty common as well. Next up, we have the 10mm. This is a 200 grain Underwood hollow point out of the 10mm Glock 20. I'm gonna try to put this one a little bit higher. Oh yeah. Whew, that thing is powerful. So keep in mind that the 10mm is literally designed for maximum penetration. So here is the entrance hole on that first wall from our 10mm, and I'm also counting this as a house. So when I say like the second house, the third house, the fourth house, that's including the wall of the house that you're inside of. So technically we have 4 houses, but 5 if you include that first wall as a house. So I'm just gonna go ahead and walk along the side of it here. You can see it's that one on the very top, and our 10mm penetrated all the way down to there. Now let's take a look at the back side of that fourth house. There's a little bulge, you guys probably won't be able to see it, but the 10mm went all the way through to the fourth house. Now again, it's technically 3 extra houses, but if you include that first wall, that is 4 houses that the 10mm went through. Big difference. All right, the last handgun we're gonna shoot is the 44 Magnum. This is obviously a hollow point, and we're shooting this one out of the Taurus 444 ultralight 44 Magnum. I know a lot of you guys like to pretend you're Dirty Harry and use a 44 Magnum for home defense, so let's see what it does. Good grief. All right, so there's our 44 Magnum right there on the right, and I want you guys to take a look at the exit hole from that 44 Magnum compared to all the others. So obviously it went through the first one into that second house, and again, just by far the biggest exit holes that we've gotten so far. But you can see that the 44 Magnum actually went into our third house and came to a stop right there. So it did not exit the third house. So the 44 Magnum stopped in the exact same spot as the 40 Smith & Wesson. Now, again, there are studs kind of randomly placed in some of these, so maybe it hit, you know, 2 studs instead of 1, I'm not really sure. But in this test, the 10mm penetrated 1 more house than the 44 Magnum, and the 44 Magnum stopped in the same wall as the 40 Smith & Wesson. That's interesting. All right, moving on to the rifles. First up, we have probably the most common self-defense rifle in the United States. This is the Daniel Defense Mark 18 AR pistol. I would say this is a pretty good home defense AR, and we're actually going to shoot 2 different rounds out of the AR. So first up, we have the 55 grain PMC, just regular ball target ammo, and then under that we have the 77 grain Black Hills OTM, a really high dollar, highly regarded self-defense round. So with the 5.56, I've heard that because the bullets are so lightweight and going so fast that they actually tend to kind of go crazy and lose their energy quicker than a lot of those handguns that we shot. So I want to test a really fast, really lightweight 55 grain and then a really good home defense round. So let's do it. I also moved my slow-mo camera off to the right because we're gonna start shooting on this side now. First up, the PMC and the Black Hills. Well, that was loud. My earplugs weren't in all the way. All right, so our 55 grains on top and our 77 grain hollow point is just below that. You can see where they both exited that first house. The Black Hills looks like it's tumbling at this point already. Got that oblong shaped entrance hole into the neighbor's house, and they did both go all the way into the neighbor's house. Exited the neighbor's house. Again, the Black Hills is a much bigger exit hole. And then going into that third house, the Black Hills is actually broke apart into 3 pieces. So you can see the PMC is still intact, whereas the Black Hills is fragmented into 3 different pieces. And neither one of those went into that third house. So the AR-15 went through, obviously, the first wall, into the neighbor's house, and then stopped. So for all of you guys that don't use AR-15s for home defense because you think they'll over penetrate and go through every house on the block just because it's a rifle, you can see here they actually penetrated less than several of the handguns that we shot, and no more than a 9mm or a 380. That really high speed, really lightweight bullet actually doesn't over penetrate even as bad as some pistols do. All right, next up, we have to shoot the AK-74. You guys know this is one of my favorite rifles. This one is chambered in 5.45 by 39. I believe this is the 60 grain Wolf mil-spec, and this is a violent little round. I've tested it in jail, never kept it in there. It always tumbles and yaws and goes crazy. The closest I've ever found to like legit 7.6, you know, mil-spec ammo. So let's see how many houses this one will go through. We're gonna aim high on this one. Oh yeah. I can see smoke coming out of one of our houses like it burnt the insulation. Check that out. Started a little fire in there. All right, our 5.45 went in right there on top, obviously the same size as the 5.56s. Coming out of that first wall, you can see it's already tumbling like crazy. Humongous exit hole, probably bigger than both of our 5.56s. Again, incredibly long entrance hole. Into that second house, it did go all the way into that second house. You can see, looks like it broke apart right there. We have two entrance holes, both of them really long, like that bullet probably split in half. And then coming out of the second house, we have a giant exit hole, and then 2 to 3 entrance holes, it looks like, maybe 2, and then a third dent going into that third house. And it actually did, at least a piece of it did go all the way into our third house, and you can see it just left a little dent right there on that wall. So the 5.45 did go all the way into the third house, but it looks like it was just a piece of the bullet, and this is the one that was actually smoking it just a minute ago. So as far as over penetration goes, the AR-15 actually did a little bit better than the AK-74. Keep in mind with the AK-74, there are hollow points and stuff that would penetrate less. That's probably the hardest 5.45 to stop, but it's my favorite round, so I had to test it. Next up, we have the AK-47 shooting the 7.62 by 39. And I actually brought out a hollow point for this one, so let's see what it does. That one went kind of low. Let's try it again. All right, our 7.62s are right there. Obviously the first one went low. I'll show you where it went here in a second. Both of them exiting right next to each other. You can see not as much tumbling as we got with the 5.45 and the 5.56. Not even close. This bullet is staying much more stable going through all this stuff. Look at that exit hole. Good grief. And then you can see, I'm just gonna skip straight to it. So here is where our first one went and took off some of that wood. You can see where it exited out the bottom, but the second one is continuing on, and it actually went all the way through and out the back of that very last layer. So depending on how you count these, it would have went basically through 4 complete houses into the 5th house, which is exactly what I expected with the 7.62 by 39. All right, let's have some fun 12 gauge shotgun time. This is still one of the most common and popular home defense guns out there. People love to use shotguns. First up, we're gonna start with some number 8 birdshot, probably the most controversial of all shotgun loads for home defense. Most people say it's not effective enough, but it supposedly doesn't over penetrate as much either. So I did move back because I don't want to just blow giant holes through this stuff. We're back probably a couple yards, not too far, but let's see what the shotty does. Yeah, I don't think we stepped back far enough. All right, there's a number 8 shot. You can see most of it just made a giant hole. We do have some little holes there from the pellets, and then of course the biggest exit hole so far by a mile, and you can see where it looks like the wad got trapped right there, and a lot of those pellets did not even go through that first layer of siding. You can see there's 100 dents, but very few holes, if any, and then nothing came out of the back. So the 12 gauge shotgun with the birdshot exited your wall and did not go into the neighbor's house at all. So far, that is the least amount of over penetration that we've got out of any of these guns, even less than the 22. Number 4 buckshot, a really popular home defense load. Go a little higher. And there's our number 4 buckshot, definitely a tighter group than our birdshot gave us. And again, just absolute carnage on the backside of that first wall into the neighbor's house. And you can see it did go all the way into the neighbor's. Put a few holes up there on the top, and nothing came out the back. So the number 4 buckshot exited the first wall, went into the neighbor's house, and then stopped. Not too bad. Let's try some good old 9 pellet double-aught buckshot. I would say this is still probably the most popular. Whew, looks like a little paw print. Well, I'm a moron and forgot to hit record on my slow-mo camera for that one, but you can see where our double-aught buckshot went in. Looks like a little paw print right there on the front. Obviously, pretty good exit hole, nowhere near as big as the birdshot or the number 4 buckshot. It looks like it stayed in a much tighter group going through there. Into the neighbor's house. You can see it did go all the way in. We have some holes down there. And very interesting, it looks like it deformed the outside of the neighbor's house. Maybe 1 or 2 pellets came through, but nothing went into that third house. So a tiny bit more penetration than the number 4 buck, which stopped in the neighbor's house. The double-aught buckshot did go all the way through the neighbor's house, at least a few pellets did, but you can see we mainly just got dents and then nothing went through and into that third house. So not quite as much penetration as I expected from the double-aught buckshot. Not too bad. All right, we're gonna finish this off with a 12 gauge shotgun slug, but since everyone kind of already knows that slugs over-penetrate like crazy, I figured why not try one of our homemade exploding shotgun slugs and see what this thing does. Interestingly enough, I almost wonder if this exploding slug benefited us in this overpenetration test because it detonates on impact and kind of explodes. So here's where it went in. Obviously, pretty small hole right there. And then just absolute carnage on the backside of this thing. I mean, holy crap. If that insulation wasn't fire retardant, we'd probably have a fire in there. We still kind of do. You can see it smoking right there. It's burning, or at least trying to. And then obviously it did come out right there. Looks like it exited the neighbor's house right there, but actually did not go into the third house. So it exited the first house, through the neighbor's house, and then just kind of dented that third house right there. I definitely thought that that one would go through 3 or 4 houses. So let's try a regular slug if we have any room left after that and see if it goes any further. By the way, I would not recommend those exploding slugs for home defense unless you want to burn the house down and get in a ton of legal trouble. But next up, we have a tomahawk, just regular old 12 gauge hollow point home defense slug. I think this will probably penetrate further. Let's see. Try to put this one more to the left. So shotgun slugs are interesting because they're obviously really big and really heavy, which usually means they're harder to slow down, but they're also not going incredibly fast. So that giant piece of lead could also cause it to slow down quicker than, say, a smaller, faster bullet would. I don't know. Let's see. Here is the entrance hole from that tomahawk 12 gauge slug. Coming out the back, you can see once again just a massive gnarly exit hole. That first wall has definitely seen better days. And then it went into the neighbor's house right there. And I'll just go ahead and walk along the side here so you guys can see. Obviously went all the way through the neighbor's house, into that third house, all the way through that third house. You can see our exit hole right there. And actually stopped on the outside of the fourth house. And it did not go in there, although it looks like it hit that thing with quite a bit of force. So I don't know if it's still intact. I'm gonna go ahead and look for that slug here on the ground, and I'll let you guys know if I find it. And there she is, right underneath our walls here, just completely intact. That is amazing. Obviously covered in drywall, but I mean, that is a heavy chunk of lead right there. That thing is completely intact, obviously deformed quite a bit, but man, that's impressive. And look at what I found. This is obviously just a wad, but I believe that this is a humongous chunk of our exploding shotgun slug. Look at how cool that thing is. Wow. Well, everybody, I have a ton of cleaning up to do, and I would imagine this video is probably way too long as it is. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this one up right here. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said, a ton of work and time and money went into this one. So I just hope you guys enjoyed it and got some valuable information out of it. Honestly, it kind of went as I expected it to. There were a couple surprises, obviously a couple curveballs, but you know, pretty much as I expected and true to what I've heard about all these calibers over the years. The 5.56 AR-15 does not over-penetrate as bad as people think it does, and as we saw, some of those handguns even penetrated further than the AR-15, and it went no further than the 9mm and, you know, smaller handgun calibers that you would consider way less effective. So the AR-15 has always been a good gun for home defense, and I think that this video kind of confirmed that the over-penetration is not as big of a concern as a lot of people think. Of course, over-penetration is always a concern. You want to be sure of your target and what's beyond it. One of the most important safety rules out there. But as with any caliber that's effective enough for home defense, over-penetration is just something that you're going to have to deal with. So let me know in the comments how you guys feel about this. Let me know what caliber you use for home defense. I'd be glad to hear from you guys. As always, if you like the video, please hit that like button for me, guys. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.